The quieter I get, the more dangerous I become. Not rage, not explosion, not the beating of a drum. Just a focus so precise, it cuts through everything around. The quieter I get, the more dangerous I become. No sound. The quieter I get, the more dangerous I become. While you're still performing, I've already come to the place where nothing shakes me, nothing moves me from the line. The quieter I get, the more dangerous I become. Every time I used to think that strength was visible, worn on the surface like a sign, that a man had to announce what he was capable of and make his power known in the line. I was young and I was learning, and the world rewarded volume and display, and I performed it for a season, until the season burned away, until I stood in a room full of loud men and felt the gap between us widen, between the ones who talked the way and the ones who quietly carried and decided that the real position isn't taken with the voice, it's taken with the posture and the work. The quiet man who shows up every morning leaves the room without a smirk. They underestimate the quiet one. They always make that choice. They mistake the silence for a weakness. They mistake the calm for no voice. But the water that runs deepest makes the least noise on the surface of the stream. And the man who never warns you is the sharpest thing you've never seen. Yeah, the quieter I get, oh, the more dangerous I become. Not rage, not explosion, not the beating of a drum. Just a focus so precise, it cuts through everything around. The quieter I get, the more dangerous I become. No sound. I've been in negotiations where the other side was loud and I was barely there. I've been in conversations where the room assumed my silence meant I didn't care. I let them keep assuming, I let them fill the space with everything they thought they knew. Because a man who shows his calculations early gives his position away to you. And I've learned the cost of that. I paid it in the years before the lesson landed. I've watched myself speak too soon and watched the whole advantage get disbanded. So now I hold the cup until the moment when the holding is the move that wins. And I want more from the quiet than from anything the loud world ever brings. The wolf doesn't announce the hunt, the fire doesn't announce the heat. The man who's truly built for this moves last and never takes defeat. patience is the sharpest blade that any man can forge and hold. And the quieter the man becomes, the story he is telling is bold. The quieter I get, oh, the more dangerous I become. Not rage, not explosion, not the beating of a drum, just a focus so precise it cuts through everything around. The quieter I get, the more dangerous I become. No sound. It's after midnight and the city is performing all its noise for anyone who needs it. The bars are full of men confessing and the music's loud for anyone who feeds it. I walk through it like weather, like a man who knows the storm is not his story. I've already had my storm, I've already paid the price of every gory detail of a life that tried to break me in the ways that lives are good at. I came out from the other side with something most men never could at. That price, which is the quiet, which is the absolute command of every nerve, which is the knowledge that the man you are is more than what you're asked to serve. I'm not cold because I don't feel things. I'm cold because I feel them fully. And I learned that showing everything you feel is how the world controls you truly. It's how they find the level, find the edge, find the place to push the weight in. It's how they make you reactive, and reactive men are always second and always late in. Always giving up position to the man who didn't blink, who didn't move, who didn't answer. The man who let the silence do the work is always fast, always sharper, always the last dancer, standing in the room when all the noise has finally spent itself and gone. The quiet man is always there, still standing, still composed, still strong, still on. The quieter I get, oh, the more dangerous I become. More dangerous, more dangerous. You only see the finish, not the cost. You only see the standing, not the lost. You see the man in front of you, composed and built and clear. You don't see every winner it took to get him here. You only see the finish, not the cost. You only see the finish, not the cost. Every version of me that failed and still got tossed into the fire again until something harder came. You only see the finish, not the cost, not the pain. There's a version of this body that worked in cold that nobody counted, that showed up when the wheel was empty and everything was undiscounted, that ate alone and drove in silence and didn't tell a living person that inside of it the pressure was only building and not worsening into something better. It was just pressure, pure and simple, the kind that doesn't offer explanation, the kind that builds itself in the chest and waits for any small provocation. And I subtraction. Take away the comfort, take away the ease, take away the crowd and everything it sees. What's left is what was always there beneath the surface of the man, a quiet burning discipline that runs deeper than a plan. You only see the finish, not the cost. You only see the standing, not the loss. You see the man in front of you, composed and built and clear. You don't see every winner it took to get him here. You only see the finish, not the cost. My grandfather built a house with 40 hours a week of overtime remaining, from a wage that barely covered what the family needed and the land kept claiming. He never mentioned it, not once, not a single recorded conversation where he said he was tired or afraid or close to the edge of his foundation. He just kept laying brick and beam and window frame and door and morning, like the building was the answer to the question he was forming about whether a man is what he says or whether a man is what remains. When you strip away the language and you count the honest gains, which were never money, never recognition, never someone saying thank you, friend. Just a house that stood for 60 years and stood until the end. That's the cost you never see, that's the price the quiet men pay. In the long years between the starting and the arrival of the day, they celebrate the monument, they never ask the ground, they never asked what had to stay buried for it to be found. The silence underneath the structure, the man beneath the stone, the decades of decision made entirely alone. You only see the finish, not the cost. You only see the standing, not the loss. You see the man composed and controlled and clear. You don't see every season it costs to bring him here. You only see the finish, not the cost. I sit here with this glass and think about the version of me that almost didn't make it, the version that was tested by a year so cold I nearly couldn't take it. Not dramatically, no moment of collapse, no single thing that broke the spine, just a slow accumulation of a pressure line crossing over every line. And yet I'm here, and yet the glass is steady, and the hand that holds it doesn't shake, and the eyes that face the room tonight know exactly what is real and what is fake. That's the cost you never counted, that's the price tag nobody reads. That's the man who built himself from nothing, but his discipline and what he bleeds when nobody is watching, when the room is gone to sleep, when the city's gone to quiet, when it's just a man and all his miles and everything that makes him still defy it. I'm not asking for your recognition, I'm not asking to be seen, I'm just saying there is more beneath this surface than has ever been shown to anyone who hasn't earned the right to know the price. I'm just saying what you see tonight was paid for more than twice, paid in years of early mornings and nights I can't describe, paid in things I chose to carry just to keep the right ones alive. And if I seem composed and cold and perfectly controlled and clean, that's because I spent a decade making peace with what I've been. You only see the finish, not the cost. You only see the standing, not what I've lost. You see the man composed and built and clear. You don't see every brutal winner that put me here. Not the cost, not the cost. Every version of me that failed and still got tossed into the fire again, till something harder came. You only see the finish, not the I stopped explaining myself the day I became free. No more justifying what they couldn't see. No more translating who I am into a language they can hold. I stopped explaining myself, and the silence turned to gold. I stopped explaining myself the day I became free. Every apology I dropped became a part of me that couldn't be diminished, couldn't be reduced or sold. I stopped explaining myself, and I finally came home. There was a time I needed every room to understand my reasoning, a time I walked in with my case prepared and all my defenses seasoning. Every word, every choice I had to lay out like a verdict before the crowd, like my existence needed approval and my silence was too loud. And I gave that performance every time because I thought that was the price. I thought that being known meant being legible and readable and precise, in the way other people needed, not in the way that I existed deep in mine. I thought the explanation was the proof that I was worthy of the line. The day I stopped explaining was the day the weight came off. The day I chose my own accounting was the day I stopped the cost of giving every stranger every access to the core of what I was, of letting other people's comprehension be the only measuring, because I stopped explaining myself the day I became free. No more justifying what they couldn't ever see. No more translating who I am for someone else's frame. I stopped explaining myself, and I finally kept my name. There are men who live their whole lives inside the sentence of another person's judgment, who trim themselves to fit the shape that someone else decided was the adjustment required for belonging, for the warmth of being accepted in the room. And those men never fully live because they're always in the costume. I wore it too, I know the weight, I know the way it gets inside your posture. I know the way you start to speak before you think, the way it makes you an investor in other people's comfort at the cost of every honest thing inside you. And the investment never pays, the comfort never lasts, and you're left without a guide to, without a center, without the core, without the thing that makes a man, without the uncompromising private yes or no that only you understand. That's what I found when I stopped explaining. That's the thing the silence gave to me, a center so precise and so untouchable that nothing could take it from me. Not arrogance, not isolation, not the pride of being cold, just the knowledge that the man who knows himself never needs to be told by anyone whose understanding of him starts and ends at what he shows. A man who owns his silence owns the only thing that grows. I stopped explaining myself the day I became free. No more performing for a crowd. stopped explaining myself, and everything became clear. I'm in this room tonight without a single word of preparation for how I appear. I don't need to manage the impression, I don't need to engineer the atmosphere. I'm just a man who walked in knowing what he is and what he isn't and what the cost was, who paid it in the years before this moment and knows exactly what the loss was and what the gain was, which was this, exactly this particular quiet authority that doesn't come from being louder, that doesn't come from performing any priority. It comes from the accumulated decision to stop handing people the controls, from the discipline of keeping what is yours inside the parts of you that no one ever knows. I sit here and I feel the room around me, and I feel the old compulsion pass right through. The one that says explain yourself, make yourself legible, make them understand you. And I let it pass because I know now what that compulsion costs a man. It costs him the only thing he truly owns, the right to be exactly who he can. Freedom didn't come from being loved by everyone I faced. Freedom came the morning I stopped running from the space between who I was performing and who I actually was inside. Freedom is the permanent decision to stop choosing the disguise over the real thing, over the unpolished and the unmanaged and the true, over the version of yourself that only comes when you stop asking it to be acceptable, be legible, be comfortable for the crowd in attendance. Freedom is the moment when you choose your own company over the dependence. I stopped explaining myself the day I became free. Oh Lord, became free. No more justifying, no more being what they need. No more. No more him. I don't break, I disappear and rebuild. Every scar I carry is a promise fulfilled. No noise when I vanish, no trace when I'm gone. I don't break, I just disappear and rebuild from the bone. I don't break, I disappear and rebuild. While the loud ones collapse, I stay focused and still. No announcement, no exit, no goodbye to the world. I don't break, I disappear and rebuild. There's a version of me that died quietly in a room no one entered, a version that needed approval and lived in the center of other people's opinions and other people's applause, a version that bled every time that it paused and withdrew from the cause. I let that version go without a funeral, without a single word spoken. Not because it was easy, but because staying broken was the only thing broken. There are men who announce their destruction, who perform every wound to the crowd. I sealed mine in silence and rebuilt in a room where nothing was was allowed to be loud. They thought I'd disappear because I had nothing to give. No, I disappeared because I had something to fix. Something deep in the structure, something old in the frame, something only silence can repair and only fire can reclaim. I don't break, oh, I disappear and rebuild. Every scar I carry is a promise fulfilled. No noise when I vanish, no trace when I'm gone. I don't break, I just disappear and rebuild from the bone. Oh, I don't break, I disappear and rebuild. While the loud ones collapse, I stay focused and still. No announcement, no exit, no goodbye to the world. I don't break, I disappear and rebuild. My father disappeared for 3 months when I was 17 and learning. He came back different, quieter, harder, something inside him still burning. I didn't understand it then. I thought he'd abandoned the post, but now I know that kind of leaving is what men do when they're closest. Closest to the edge, to the bottom, to the wall that has no door in it. Closest to becoming something lesser if they don't find the floor in it. And the floor is always silence, the floor is always alone at 4 a.m. with the cost of it. The floor is where a man finds out exactly what he's made of when he's lost all of it. Some men break in public, make the crowd their witness stand. Some men break in private with no one to hold their hand. And from that private breaking, something harder takes the shape of a man who doesn't need the room to know he's not escaped. I don't break, I disappear and rebuild. Every scar I carry is a promise fulfilled. No noise when I vanish, no trace when I'm gone. I don't break, I just disappear and rebuild from the bone. 3 in the morning, city still and cold and mine entirely. No witnesses, no audience, just the work burning quietly and reliably. I've learned to love this hour because it doesn't ask what I've been through. It just holds the space around me and lets me do what I need to do, which is nothing like the daylight version, nothing like the composed and managed face. This is the real construction. This is where a man rebuilds his foundation and his place in the world he chooses, not the world that happened to him in the years before. This is where I disappear to. This is what the disappearing was always for. Disappearing isn't weakness, it's the most controlled thing I've ever done. It's refusing to perform the damage, it's refusing to come undone in front of everyone. It's choosing the repair over the reaction, choosing the rebuild over the display. It's the decision that the man I'm becoming is worth more than anything I say. So I go quiet, so I go dark, so I drop off every map they made for me. I come back hard. Because the man who needs the audience to validate the healing never actually heals anything. I don't break, I don't break. I disappear and rebuild. Oh Lord, every scar I carry is a promise fulfilled. No noise when I vanish. No noise when I vanish. No trace when I'm gone. I don't break, I just disappear. Every version of me that failed made me who I am tonight. Every door that closed in darkness taught me how to build the light. Every time I hit the bottom and the bottom held me down, every version of me that failed made me the man they found. Every version of me that failed became the strongest part. Every wound I couldn't speak about became the island of my heart. Every version of me that fell and stayed down for a while. Every version of me that failed made me worth a mile. The version of me at 23 who thought he had the whole thing figured out, who walked into a room with certainty and walked out full of doubt, who built a life on borrowed confidence and someone else's map, who watched it all come down in 18 months and felt the final snap of every bright and easy thing he thought was his by right, or wanting it, of every comfortable assumption that the world was built for welcoming it. That version had to die before a harder version could be born. And the dying wasn't cinematic, it was just being quietly torn from the version that the world had led believe the cost was small, from the boy who had to fall before he understood the wall between the life that happens to you and the life that you build is made of every failure that you faced and didn't yield. Every version of me that failed made me who I am tonight. Every door that closed in darkness taught me how to build the light. Every time I hit the bottom, and the bottom held me down. Every version of me that failed made me the man they found. The version of me at 28 who loved the wrong one with everything available, who gave without the knowledge that not all love is sustainable, who stayed too long in rooms that dimmed him, stayed too long in the diminishing, who confused the familiarity of pain with something worth continuing. That version had to understand that staying when it costs you who you are is not devotion, it's destruction, dressed in the clothing of a scar. You romanticize for years Because the truth is too expensive to admit, that you abandon yourself at the altar of someone else's benefit. And when that version finally walked away, he walked away from more than her. He walked away from every small surrender, every long, slow blur between the man he started as and what the years of quiet cost had made. And what he walked into was harder and more honest and less afraid. Because every failure is a lesson with a price attached to it. And every price you pay in full becomes the part that doesn't quit. The part that has already seen the worst and chose to still go on. The part that knows the bottom of the night and still comes back at dawn. Every version of me that failed made me who I am tonight. Every door that closed in darkness taught me how to build the light. Every time the bottom held me, I came back with something more. Every version of me that failed brought me to this door. Now I sit inside the life I built from everything that didn't work, from every miscalculation and every earned and unearned hurt, from every year I tried the wrong direction before the right one opened, from every cold and empty morning where I kept the covenant I'd spoken to myself, the only witness in the rooms when nobody was present, to the promise that the man I was becoming would be worth the crescent of pain that carved him from the block of what he was before the failing, before the beautiful and necessary process of the real prevailing over the comfortable and manageable and smaller and the safe, over the version that would fit more easily inside a frame that other people built for him and offered him and sold him as a life. I chose the harder version, and the harder version cut me like a knife into the shape I actually am, into the thing that doesn't break, into the only version of myself that's worth the years it took to make. I don't mourn the versions of me that didn't make it to this room tonight. I owe them, I owe every one of them. They were the cost of getting it right. Every burned bridge was a fire that showed me what was worth rebuilding. Every failure was a clearing that made room for what I'm building. And I'm building something permanent now, something no. Men who build in silence, never beg for noise, never need the crowd to validate the choice, never need the headline or the name above the door. Men who build in silence always build for more. Men who build in silence, men who build in silence, let the structure speak. They don't chase the mountain when they're at the peak. They just keep on building when the watchers all have gone. Men who build in silence keep on building on and on. There is a particular kind of man who works when no one is accounting, who lays the groundwork in the hours that the rest of the world is discounting. As rest as sleep as recovery from the performance of the day, who understands that work gets built in private never gets taken away by opinion or by circumstance, or by the turning of the crowd, who never needed anyone to witness what he built to make it proud, to make it real, to make it permanent, to make it worth the cost of the years. Because real things don't require an audience, they only require the man who perseveres. The building is the validation, the structure is the proof. The years of showing up are the only honest truth that matters in the long account that no one else can read. The work is the applause for men who plant their own seed, men who build in silence, never beg for noise, never need the crowd to ratify the choice, never need the validation or the name above the door. Men who build in silence always build for more. My great uncle built a business from a truck and $30 in a town that didn't want him there, and made sure every door came down. Before he got his foot inside, every handshake came revoked. Every invitation was a test to see how quickly he would fold. He didn't fold, he just got quieter, just got more precise and more contained, just got up the next morning with the same plan, slightly rearranged to account for every obstacle, to root around every wall, to build the thing he said he'd build without announcing it at all. And 30 years from that cold morning with the truck and $30 on the dash, he sat inside an office that was his and never once looked back. Not at the men who doubted him, not at the doors that closed in the early years. Cause the building was complete, and the building was the only thing that he could hear. That's the discipline that doesn't need a witness to sustain. That's the kind of man who builds regardless and regardless of the pain, who understands that every year of quiet work is compound interest in the self, who never put his worth on any shelf. Men who build in silence, never beg for noise. They move through every obstacle with composure and with poise. They never need the room to turn, they never need to be adored. Men who build in silence are the ones who can afford. I've watched men spend their building years performing the idea of building to the crowd, announcing the foundation while the actual foundation crumbled, making everything loud, making every obstacle a story, and every setback a performance for the feed, while men beside them in the quiet actually met every need. actual structure of the thing that takes your years and doesn't care whether you told anyone about it, whether anyone was there to witness the decision and the discipline and the price of every early morning. The work doesn't care about your audience. The work only cares about you showing up for it completely, without the armor of the performance and the brand. Just a man and what he's building, and exactly what he has at hand, which is never everything he needs, and always less than what the job demands. But he builds anyway, with whatever is available. That's what it means to stand. Building in silence is not humility in the passive sense of shrinking. It's the confidence that what you're making doesn't need anyone else's thinking to confirm its value or its purpose or its right to occupy the space. It's the sovereign man inside his work who doesn't need to justify his place. It's the understanding that the loudest men in any room are usually the most afraid, that the noise is the distract. Men like us don't speak of it. Men like us don't speak of it. We just carry it and get on with the living of it. We just show up and we keep the structure standing, even when the walls are demanding more than we agreed to when we started. They never made a manual for men who carry this. Carry this, carry this. They never wrote the chapter on the weight of all of this. Men like us don't speak of it, don't advertise, don't leak of it. Don't speak, don't speak, don't speak. Men like us don't speak of it. We just hold it till the week of it passes into something bearable, something quiet, something wearable. Men like us, we just carry on in the silence, in the long, long song. I've known men who worked the morning shift through grief that had no name, who clocked in at the same machine the day after the flame. Took everything they'd built to smile at the foreman's joke, who drove home in the evening in the silence, in the smoke of a life that keeps demanding that you show up, that you stay, that you be the thing the others need regardless of the day. I've known those men, I've been that man, I know the marrow of it, the particular quiet that comes from choosing not to speak of it. Not because the feeling isn't there, but because the feeling is too large for open air. Men like us don't speak of it, don't advertise, don't leak of it. Men like us don't speak of it. We just hold it till the week of it passes into something bearable, something quiet, something wearable. Men like us, we just carry on in the silence and the long, long song. My friend lost his son on a Tuesday in November cold. He was back at work by Friday, 38 years old. I watched him move through the warehouse like a man who made a deal with some private understanding of exactly what to feel and when to feel it and where to put it, so the work gets done, so the others don't have to carry what belongs to one. I saw him in the parking lot on the Thursday night, alone inside his car in the dark without a light. I didn't knock the window, I just sat in mine beside him. Two men in their parallel silences, and nothing to divide them. That's the language between men like us. No words required, just the knowing that you're in it, and it's just. Men like us don't speak of it, don't advertise, don't leak of it. Men like us don't speak of it, we just hold it till the week of it passes into something bearable, something quiet, something wearable. Men like us, we just carry on in the silence and the long, long song. I want to say this carefully, because it matters, every word. This is not a eulogy for men who should have spoken stirred. This is not a call to silence, not a prescription for the pain. This is just a recognition that some things have their own terrain. Some grief has its own country and its own internal law. Some strength has its own grammar that the world has never saw. And the men who live inside it, who were raised inside its tongue, deserve to be acknowledged in a song that can be sung without condescension, without pity, without the modern claim that every man should process everything out loud and just the same. I'm not saying don't talk. I'm not saying keep it all inside. I'm saying there's a kind of man who carries what he carries because he chose to, because someone had to, because the family needed dinner, and the mortgage needed paying, and the children needed knowing that the world was safe enough. And he was the one who made it so. And he was the one who made it so. Not by talking about it, by doing it. Every day, without a single word. And if that man is your father, or your brother, or the face you see at 4 a.m. in the bathroom mirror, I want you to know I see you. The music sees you. You are not alone. We sat beside our fathers in the old trucks in the morning. We learned the art of presence without needing any warning. We learned that showing up was love before we had the word, that love was in the doing more than anything we heard. We learned it in the kitchen at 6 a.m. in winter. We learned it in the workshop, every nail and every splinter. We learned it in the way they moved when we I learned more from silence from everything they said, more from empty rooms at midnight than from books I've read. Silence has a texture. It's not nothing, it's a weight, the kind that settles on your shoulders early, never late. It came to me the year I stopped pretending I was fine, the year I cleared the table, drew a harder kind of line between the man I was performing and the man I was inside, between the face I wore to daylight and the one I wore to hide. Oh, not hiding from the world, understand. Hiding from the version that the world had built with its own hand. Silence taught me everything, more than any voice has ever said. Silence taught me everything about the living and the dead, about the man I was becoming through the long and hollow nights. Silence taught me everything, and everything was right. I learned to sit with discomfort like a guest inside my home, to pour it something warm and let it know it's not alone, because the things we run from only grow in the running. The things we sit with quietly lose all of their cunning. I learned the difference between lonely and the being alone. Lonely is the absence, being alone is coming home to yourself, to the man beneath the mask, the one who has the answers, the one you're afraid to ask. Fear is loud, it needs the noise. Strength is quiet, it needs the space. Fear talks over everything. Strength looks it in the face. Silence taught me everything, more than any voice has ever said. Silence taught me everything about the living and the dead, about the man I was becoming through the long and hollow nights. Silence taught me everything, and everything was right. The blues was born from silence, from the things it couldn't speak, from men who had to hold it through the strong days and the weak, who sat with instruments instead because the words weren't there, who bent a string until it sounded like a man's despair. I understand the bending, I have bent that way before, when language wasn't wide enough to open up the door between the feeling and the saying, between the having and the gone, between the staying and the leaving, and just carrying on. With the silence at 4 a.m., more honest than the ones I've had with most of them. The silence never told me what I wanted to believe, it only told me what was true and let me choose to leave or stay with what was real, with what was mine, with what was hard, with every unpolished corner, every unhealed scar. And in that staying, in that choosing, in that honest dark, found the man I actually was from the very start. People talk about finding themselves like it's a destination, like one day you arrive somewhere bright and everything makes sense. That's not how it works. find yourself. You find yourself in the silence, in the 3 a.m. rooms, in the long drives home, in the moment after the noise stops, when there's just you and the truth of you, and you have to decide what to do with what you find. That decision is the whole man. Now I protect my silence like a man protects his home. I don't fill it up with noise, just so I'm not alone. I let it do its work in me, I let it run its course. I've learned that all the power comes from learning at the source. And the source is what is real, and what is real is what remains. When the performance has been stripped away and only truth remains, a man alone with what he is. No stage, no light, no cue, just the silence and the person that the silence always knew. I wanna tell you something that nobody told me young, that the quietest men I've ever known had the strongest lungs. Not for shouting, not for arguing, not for making noise, but for breathing through the hard parts that destroy the boys. You never learn to sit with it, who never learn the art of being in the difficulty without falling apart. The art is not the absence of the feeling, Lord, it's not. The art is in the holding and the staying in the plot of a life that keeps structure, even when the beams give way, even when the whole foundation shifts beneath the clay. Silence taught me everything. Every scar I carry has a date and has a name. Every one of them a lesson, and I'm grateful all the same. Not because the pain was easy, Lord, it cut me to the floor, but because what came out standing was worth bleeding for. I was 22 the first time that the world went fully dark, when the thing I thought would save me left its permanent mark. But I rose not because I wanted, not because I knew the way. I rose because the floor was cold and I had things to say. Not to the world don't care. Not to the crowd, they weren't there. They weren't there. They weren't there. To myself, the only witness, to the man behind the stare. Every scar a chapter, every wound a word, every scar a chapter in a book the world never heard. Every scar, every chapter, oh Lord, every scar, every chapter. Not written for the audience, not written for the fame. Every scar a chapter in the book that bears my name. I was 31 the second time, when everything fell through. business and the woman and the version of me I knew. I sat in an apartment with the boxes on the floor, counting what I had left and what I'd walked out for. And what I had left was nothing that the outside world could weigh, but something deep inside my chest that chose to stay. That stubborn ancient furnace that is never fully cooled, the one that my grandfather had, the one that couldn't be fooled. He sat in rooms like this before, He sat in cold and dark before, and he rose not because it got easier, but because he had a core. Every star a chapter, every wound a word, every scar a chapter in a book the world never heard. Not written for the audience, not written for the fame. Every scar a chapter in the book that bears my name. There's a scar above my collarbone from 1999. There's a scar inside my chest from a different kind of time. There's a scar behind my eyes that only certain light reveals. There's a scar inside my silence, that's the one that never heals. Not the one that kills you, just the one that tells you true, that the man you were at 20 has been making room for you, for the man you would become, through the losses and the cost, for the man who counts what's left instead of what he lost. I've met men who wore their wounds like trophies on a shelf, who needed every room to know the story of their self. And I understood the impulse. Lord, I had it once before the years taught me to carry without keeping score. Now I wear my scars the way a suit is meant to fit, close enough to feel them, but not loud enough to sit. At every table as the story that precedes the man. I am the man who shows up, not the story, not the plan. Every man who ever built something real has the hands to prove it. Not the soft hands, the marked ones, the ones that tell the truth. When the mouth stays quiet, you want to know who a man is? Don't listen to him talk. Watch him work. Watch him stand up. Watch what he does when there's nothing left to prove, and he does it anyway. That's the man. That's the whole man. The blues was born from this, from men who had to carry everything they couldn't say in notes and in the terror. Slow burn of a life lived close to the bone and true. The kind of life that makes you and the kind that follows through. I play this song for every man who's sitting with his glass, who's turning over chapters, watching seasons pass, who doesn't need the pity and who doesn't need the crown, just needs the music sitting next to him while the walls come down. Because what you do when you're standing in the flames. Some men let it take them, some men let it leave them bare. Some men walk out of it different. Oh, yeah. I walked into 100 rooms where no one knew my name, with a conversation carried on, and I arrived the same. No entrance and no fanfare, just the corner and the glass, the quiet of a man who lets the louder moments pass. I've stood in hospital corridors at 3 a.m. alone, holding everything together, far away from home. I've stood at graves in winter, in the January grave, and said the things I needed to in silence, far away. Oh Lord, you learn a lot about yourself when no one's in the room. When the only thing reflecting back is what you came in with, the gloom. The rooms I walked through alone built something no one else has known. Alone, alone, alone. The rooms I walked through alone, carved every corner, cut every bone. Yeah, no witness to the making, no audience to the cost. The rooms I walked through alone were where I found what I had lost. Sat in waiting rooms of doctors with the paperwork and fear. I've driven through the early morning knowing no one's near. I've eaten cold food in the parking lot before the night shift starts. I've had conversations with myself that tore the mind apart. And then put it down again, because some weights are not for sharing, they're the private weight of men. I stared at ceilings in the darkness, asking nothing of the sky. I've learned the art of carrying without ever asking why. The deepest rivers never announce, they just begin to run. Begin to run, begin to run. The quietest fires burn the longest, long after day is done. The rooms I walked through alone built something no one else has known. The rooms I walked through alone, carved every corner, cut every bone. No witness to the making, no audience to the cause. The rooms I walked through alone were where I found what I had lost. I've sat across from men who had me figured wrong from the start, who saw the silence as a weakness, couldn't read the heart, who thought that calm meant empty, thought that still meant done. I let them keep their version. It was easier than one. Easier than opening the drawer where all the real things live. Easier than showing what it costs to constantly forgive. The world for being what it is, demanding and unclear. I just smiled and did my work and kept my counsel near. Oh Lord, jazz doesn't interrupt a man. It waits till he is done. It knows just enough to sit beside him under every sun. I didn't come here to let go. I came to give the weight. Give it to the music. Let the music carry lead. The things that have no language, the things too big for words, the things a man keeps folded like migratory birds that come back every winter and you know them when they land. The weight of all the rooms you walked alone in your own hand. All those rooms, all those corridors, all those mornings I walked out of places and nobody watched me go. I used to think that was loneliness. Now I know that was the making of me. Every room I walked through alone was a room that made me stronger. Every silence was a sentence I was writing for myself, not for anyone else. See me maybe 40 times or more. He never asked the questions I never asked before. We have an understanding built on nothing but the night. Two men in their quiet, both acknowledging the guide of getting through another night, of showing up again, of being unremarkable and strong and free of blame, of leaving when the hour comes without a backward look, a life lived in the margins. They handed me the trouble early. I was barely 10 years old. The kind of cold that gets inside your chest and never gets told. My mother worked the double shifts. My father worked the land. And nobody sat me down to say, "Here, son, here's how you stand." But I watched them both get up each day, regardless of the weight. And somewhere in that watching, I started learning late that a man is not defined by what the world decides to give. He's defined by every morning and the choice to live. They say the strong ones never cry. I said no, they cry alone, where the darkness can't expose them and the ground becomes their throne. A man who never broke, didn't bend bend, didn't fold, didn't choke. Never broke, never broke. A man who never broke, carried every stone, bore every smoke. No medal, no monument, no speech upon a hill. Just a man who chose the morning. Every morning, every morning still. I worked in cold that bit the hands before the sun came up. I worked in heat that turned the throat to dust inside the cup. I've seen the foremen come and go, the companies fold and fade. I never folded with them, I just picked up every blade and sharpened it on silence, on the long walk home at night, on every empty dinner table lit by failing light, on every unpaid bill I spread across the kitchen floor, on every door I held together, nailing board to board. They thought my quiet was defeat. I said no, it's discipline. The difference between the man who crumbles and the man who stays within. A man who never broke, didn't bend, didn't fold, didn't choke. Never broke, never broke. A man who never broke, carried every stone, bore every smoke. No medal, no monument, no speech upon a hill. Just a man who chose the morning. Every morning, every morning still. I raised my children on the understanding, not the words. I taught them with my posture, with the early rising birds, with the way I didn't flinch when things went sideways in the night, with the way I never needed someone else to tell me right. My daughter watched me fix the engine in the January freeze. My son watched me walk into the hospital, not to my knees. I never told them life was fair, I never sold them ease. I just showed them what a man does when he meets the cold degrees. Some fathers give their children everything that money buys. I gave mine the only thing that lasts, the look behind the eyes. Oh, yeah, Lord have mercy. There were years that tried to finish me, years I won't discuss, years I sat in parking lots at midnight, just because the walls of home felt closer than the sky I used to know, and every road I drove along was somewhere I couldn't go. But I came back every morning, coat still on key, still in hand, not because I had the answers, just because I had a plan. And the plan was simply standing in the place where I was needed, in the gap between the fallen and the ones who were still seated. Nobody saw the nights, nobody counted all the mornings, nobody kept the record of the times I nearly didn't make it. But I made it. Every time I made it. And that's the whole story. That's EVERYTHING. A man needs to say, now I'm older, and the weight feels like an old companion mine. We walked enough together, it knows I'm doing fine. It still arrives at 4 a.m., still heavy, still real. But I've become the kind of man who knows exactly what I feel. And what I feel is, the kind of hole that only claim, just a man who did the work and never filed the same. If you've ever met a man like this, your father or your friend who never asked for credit and would never condescend, who fixed the things around him, who showed up, who remained, who didn't need the applause, who walked through all the rain, look him in the eye just once and say, I see you, I know, because of men who carry everything are last to let it show. They go the longest without water, they go the longest without air, and they do it all again tomorrow, because somebody's got to be there. A man who never broke, never broke, oh Lord, yeah. Didn't bend, didn't fold, didn't choke. He entered when the evening had already found its depth, when the candle had been burning long enough for every breath in the room to carry something, every voice to hold its past. He took the corner table, lowered it slow, made the night last. The amber in his glass reflected everything he knew. Every year a layer, every layer ringing true. He didn't need the company, he didn't need the crowd. He needed the piano and the bass and nothing loud. The bartender, he knew the type, the man who comes for clarity, not for conversation, not for strife, but for the music and the company of his own private life. The gentleman who carried the night, moved through the darkness, calm, no fight. Carried the night. The gentleman who carried the night, left no trace, no sound, no light, only the other man who knew exactly where he'd been. The gentleman who carried the night was never ever seen. He'd been places that had cost him, things that don't come back. He'd walk corridors of consequence, down every unmarked track. He loved the way that silent men love, fully and unseen, showing it in fixing things and in the space between. The words he never offered and the words she needed most, he understood too late, perhaps he'd given her a ghost. Not a ghost of absence, but a ghost of too much quiet. A love that never learned to speak above its own private. He carried that the way you carry things too large to name. Not with guilt, but with a knowing that some losses just remain. The gentleman who carried the night, move through the darkness, calm, no fight. The gentleman who carried the night, left no trace, no sound, no valley where he'd been, the gentleman who carried the night was never ever seen. Around him strangers traded stories, traded laughter, traded pain. He watched without intrusion, cataloged a small refrain of lives that needed audits, of people needing proof that their existence mattered, that they lived beneath a roof where the living under, worth a rent of being known. He gave them nothing, took from them nothing, stood alone, not in judgment, in the understanding of a different kind, the kind that comes from years of keeping company with your mind. He didn't come here to be seen. He came here to be undisturbed, to let the music reach the parts that the rest of the day couldn't touch, the parts that live too deep for daylight conversation, the parts that only speak when the room is low enough and the glass is right and nobody is performing and the bass is walking and the night is carrying him the way it always has. The night always carries him. He finished when the hour told him, not when he was done. He rose the way a tide recedes beneath the finished sun. No fanfare in the buttoning, no ceremony in the coat, just the measured slow departure of a man who learned by rote that the exits matter as much as every entrance made, that the way you leave a room is part of how you wait. He left the glass half full, not as waste but as a sign that a man knows when enough is enough and draws the line. Outside the night received him, no surprise in the cold air, just the understanding of two things that have always been a pair. The man who moves through darkness and the darkness moving back, each giving room to the other, each keeping to its track. He walked a long way, not because he didn't know the short, but because the long way gave him something that the short could not. The time to let the evening settle into something permanent, the time to let the music